Phasmophobia is defined as an intense fear of ghosts. Ghosts are an interesting topic since there's heavy debate on whether they exist at all. There really isn't a lot of definitive proof about them, and yet most people you meet will have a ghost story, or at the very least, a story where they encountered or witnessed something they don't know how to explain any other way. There are tools and techniques which are believed to identify the presence of lingering spirits of the dead, or to measure their activity. There are those who claim to be blessed, or cursed, with supernatural senses that allow them to perceive and communicate with spirits. Regardless of which side of the debate you're on, it's hard to refute that there are things in this world we can't yet explain, and while that isn't proof of the supernatural, it certainly is evidence of it. In the game called Phasmophobia, you play as a ghost hunter, or investigator. You and up to 3 other investigators will visit a location at night and try to collect evidence that will allow you to classify the type of ghost that is haunting it, as well as prove its existence. The ghost, meanwhile, will do things to frighten and unnerve you, and sometimes will even try to kill you. The game is currently in early access and can be played with or without VR. Despite being an early access game being developed by a small team, it has been very well received and is currently one of the top watched games on Twitch. The game has 12 different types of ghosts for you to investigate, all based on real-life folklore and having names you've likely heard used before, but maybe don't know too much about. Today, we're going to change that by learning about 6 of the 12 ghosts you may encounter. Knowledge has always been the greatest weapon to combat fear, and once you know a little more about what these ghosts are and where they came from, you'll likely feel a bit safer investigating them. Will it make them less likely to kill you? Well, probably not, but at least you'll feel more confident up until they do. Uray is, quite simply, the Japanese word for a ghost. It's an umbrella term, making up the spirits of those who do not find rest in death, and instead return to the world of the living to haunt. They are a kind of yokai, which is an even wider umbrella term for a spirit being. In Japanese belief, when a person dies, their spirit enters a sort of purgatorial state, awaiting the proper rites and rituals to be performed, allowing them to pass on to join their ancestors. If these rites are not performed, or if the death occurred in a sudden or violent manner, such as murder or suicide, the spirit would be unable to pass on, and instead become a Uray. Uray can also be created if there is a powerful negative emotion such as hatred or jealousy, or a sense of unfinished business in the mind of the dying. This will cause the Uray to return and try to complete the action the thought inspires. For example, a wife who was murdered by her husband may desire vengeance, and haunt her husband until she manages to drive him insane or kill him. Vengeful Uray such as this are called onryo. Conversely, there are also benevolent Uray, such as ubume, who are created when a mother dies in childbirth or leaves children behind. She will often return in an attempt to comfort or nurture her children, and often will give them sweets. There are also more neutral Uray, such as zashiki warashi, who are the ghosts of children and are usually much more mischievous than dangerous. Naturally, there are a few other types as well. Remember, saying Uray is the same as us here in America saying ghost. It is an umbrella term encompassing several types of ghosts of varying strength and danger born from human death. Uray are often portrayed as wearing long white robes, such as one would wear to be buried in ancient Japanese rituals, and with long black disheveled hair. The Grudge and The Ring both portray malevolent ghosts in the style of a Uray, and the old American urban legend of a woman in white on the side of the road is likely inspired by the Uray as well. One type of entity in Phasmophobia that is somewhat questionable is the Revenant. Revenants are mentioned in several cultures, including Old Irish Celtic and Norse. A Revenant, according to the folklore that inspired it, is not a ghost at all. Rather, a Revenant is used to describe an undead that is created when a person's spirit reanimates and controls their own corpse. It is not a zombie, since zombies do not retain a sense of self and are just bodies animated through some unnatural force. A Revenant contains the actual spirit the body contained while it was alive. A vampire could be considered a Revenant, for example, as could a lich. Sure, a Revenant is something that returned from the dead, and it does contain a generally malevolent spirit, but it's not a ghost, any more than a living person is a ghost. It's not something you ever want to meet in the dark, but also not something you're likely to encounter while investigating a haunted house. That said, all of this is based upon the primary interpretation of the creature, and it has long been used as a generic term for the undead or any person that came back from the land of the dead to the land of the living. It's not uncommon for Revenant to be used as a generic term for a ghost, even if it's not accurate. Kind of like how people use the word decimate to mean something was completely destroyed, when the word actually means 1 in every 10 of something was destroyed. It may not be strictly correct, but it's easy for anyone to understand what you mean from the context. A wraith is a word that is used pretty commonly in supernatural settings, but is less clear-cut and defined than other spiritual beings. The term originated in Scotland and is generally associated with malevolent spirits of those who recently died or who were on the verge of death. They commonly haunt graveyards, but have been known to appear in other locations, and they are straight up evil, wanting to cause physical harm to any they encounter. Wraiths are commonly depicted as skeletal figures draped in rags, and are believed to be created when a dying person harbors strong desire to complete some unfinished business. And since wraiths are so violent and malevolent, it's likely that the unfinished business was something bloody, or that the person was also malevolent or filled with hatred when alive. An investigator who catches the attention of a wraith is not going to have a good time, because they are actively out to hurt or kill anyone they meet. Ultimately, a wraith is less a classification of spirit and more a measure of its temperament and alignment. A wraith is a violent ghost that haunts a specific area and will attack anyone who goes there. It's not the worst thing you could encounter, but it's one of the worst things that can be born of a human spirit. Oni is another one of those terms that people have often heard, but are likely not quite sure what it means. This is honestly fitting, because the origin of the Oni is a matter of debate among scholars, with some saying the origin is truly Buddhist, while others argue that the ancient Chinese and Japanese teachings that predate Buddhism mention Oni as well. Like Uray, they are a type of yokai, or Japanese spirit being. They are often depicted as hulking ogres, sometimes with horns or a third eye on their forehead, and are generally either red, blue, or white. Some believe that Oni are created from the spirits of particularly evil people, and that some who are extremely evil actually become Oni while still alive. Of course, this kind of Oni is not a spirit, but instead is a living, breathing monster that terrorizes those it comes across. To make things more confusing, other malevolent spirits, such as the Rakshasa and Gaki, are also sometimes considered types of Oni. Oni are often said to be the wardens of Jigoku, which is essentially Japanese hell, and they torment sinners who were sentenced to go there after death by King Yama. In ancient times, Oni were ultimately seen as malevolent tormentors of humans, regardless of where and how they were encountered. In modern times, Oni are perceived as much less evil, and are often depicted as guardians or even caretakers. For example, the ogres which serve Koenma in Yu Yu Hakusho, or who serve King Yama in Dragon Ball Z. They're clearly Oni, and they're just as clearly not malevolent, acting in service to a divine authority. In parades, men actually dress as Oni and lead the parades, which is believed to dispel bad luck. There is a well-known Japanese children's game called Oni Goko, which is essentially the same as playing tag, only instead of someone being it, they are the Oni, trying to chase and catch the other children. So, while the term is very nebulous, the classic definition of an Oni is likely what Phasmophobia is using, at least in terms of temperament and threat level. A mare is a malicious entity originating from German and Slavic folklore. It is said to sit on or ride a person's chest while they sleep, causing bad dreams while draining them either of life energy or blood. In Norwegian and Danish, the words for nightmare directly translate to mare ride. They also may tangle a person's hair and, in some stories, cause severe bodily injury and even death. Fortunately, this is very uncommon, and seems to only happen if a witch or other practitioner specifically tasks a mare with doing so. Though they are malevolent towards humans and animals, they will only go after someone while they are asleep, so in a situation like the one Phasmophobia presents, they're virtually harmless to you as an investigator. Someone's soul is thought to become a mare if they harbor sin in their heart and don't go to confession, or they are severely wronged in some way and hold on to the negative feelings from it. For example, if a woman is engaged to a man, but the man goes off and marries someone else instead, it's believed the woman may transform into a mare. According to Slavic belief, a mare can also include witches who take on an animalistic, spiritual form to drain the health and life force of those who are asleep. Normal people can become a mare as well, if certain conditions are met, becoming a threat to their families, their livestock, and their neighbors. Mares can also take on a physical form, appearing as several different kinds of animals to those who see them. Let's end with the Banshee. They are often depicted as evil female ghosts who scream loudly and resemble spectral witches more than anything else in popular media. They are violent, malevolent, and deadly. While this is terrifying, it's not exactly true to their origins. The Banshee comes from Irish folklore, and their name means woman of the fairy mound. Banshee are actually she, or a type of fairy, and while they may be created from the ghost of a woman who was murdered, or who died during childbirth, they are no longer a human spirit at all. They also aren't malicious. Banshee are heralds of death and doom, but they don't cause it. They will appear outside the home of an Irish family at night and scream or shriek, wailing in grief after the death of a family member, and this is often the first sign an Irish family will receive that a family member has died far from home. They will also scream to warn members of Irish families about to depart on a journey that death awaits them. They don't haunt places, and they have no reason to attack anyone. So while the modern-day depiction of the Banshee is a terrifying ghost woman, there's no way a paranormal investigator in America would actually encounter one at all, much less be in danger from it. They are, at worst, an apparition which makes a grieving family grieve harder, their despair made more powerful by the cry of the Banshee. However, the fact that they herald death and doom to warn the Irish not to pursue a path they are on is clearly a benevolent action. While the fairy folk of Ireland are well-known tricksters, the Banshee is an exception, and no Irish-born person would ignore its cry before making an important decision. Think of them as a sort of alarm. Sure, the alarm is making a scary sound, but you aren't scared of the alarm. You're scared of what the alarm is warning you about. As you can see, Phasmophobia takes quite a few liberties in the naming conventions of its ghosts. But before we hate on Kinetic Studios for this, let's remember that we're talking about a subject built around folklore, stories, rumors, and piecemeal evidence. Despite what fantasy stories tell us, the spirit world and its denizens aren't necessarily bound to hard and fast rules, and the classifications we humans give them may be incomplete, may change over time, or may be flat out wrong. So, while the fact that a Revenant is not a ghost is an interesting bit of trivia, and the Banshee being malevolent is an example of modern media bastardizing foreign folklore, let's not use it as a weapon against Phasmophobia or its fans. Just a small request from a lorekeeper who likes to let people have fun, even if a few details are off. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to learn about the other 6 types of ghosts as well, that video is coming soon, so please subscribe so you don't miss it. Until next time, folks, thanks for watching.